And welcome everyone to a talk from two people who manage the project of greening the church at the Village Church of Wellesley. And they are Mark, is it Lency? Did I pronounce that right, Mark?
Correct.
Mark Lency and Kathy Schleier. And Mark has quite a background. He was a submarine commander in the Navy. He had 26 years in the Navy as a Navy officer, followed by a career at Lotus, IBM, and Microsoft developing cloud services. He's been with the church for 23 years. And Kathy Schleier, I didn't get a chance to ask you how long you'd been with the church, Kathy.
I have been there 33 years.
Oh my goodness. Okay, 33 years. So they're in for the long haul. And they spent, I know, a tremendous amount of time and energy getting this project through, and they're going to tell us all about it. So Mark's going to give a presentation, and we should have plenty of time for questions afterwards.
Fortunately, it was a few years less than 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, good. All right, so we're very happy to have you. We have a bunch of people from King's Chapel, but also others from other churches in the area, I know. And we're anxious to hear what you have to say, and we hope we can learn from you. So why don't we turn it over to you, Mark?
Okay. So everybody should be able to have a screen share here with me now.
Yeah, looks good.
Okay. That's a drone shot. By the way, for those of you that maintain buildings, having a drone so you can inspect the roof in your 180-foot chapel is a nice thing to have. Oh, by the way. So we're going to divide this into two pieces. The first piece is the chronology of the decisions and the numbers and facts and things we did to get to the decision to go geothermal. And the second piece is once we decided on the geothermal option, how it went from there. And the system has actually been in operation for a week now. This is day 7. So we have some screenshots of how it works and can explain about geothermal, but we want to make sure we cover the King's Chapel's primary interest of what we did to get there. So that'll be the first part. Okay. First thing to understand is this was a 10-year journey for our church. And I can't imagine a church doing this overnight. This is a big, big decision. And here's how it started with us. In 2014, as part of another capital campaign, a small amount of money was allotted for environmental stewardship, which is one of the values that the Wellesley Village Church has identified as a key thing for our congregation. That $400,000 was spent between 2014 and 2021 researching various ways to green our church and prepare for the ultimate replacement of our HVAC system, which was due in 2020. That was end of useful life. That included sealing the building envelope, which is insulated windows, insulation, partial conversion of lighting to away from fluorescent, installing a solar array, and then some preparations for the HVAC. Like we didn't have ducting to provide air conditioning to all our spaces. We added that, even though they weren't air conditioned at that time. The ducting was in place for the ultimate replacement with a new HVAC system. So that stuff went on in 2014 to 2021. I don't want to minimize that because all of that adds up to making this system even more efficient and getting us the knowledge and commitment to get there. Then in 2022, our HVAC was now beyond end of useful life and starting to degrade. And we looked at we had oil-fired boilers, old oil-fired boilers. We looked at replacing them. We looked at replacing with natural gas. We looked at air source heat pumps. And one thing we realized was that things like replacing boilers or dropping in natural gas was much simpler task. They really think of it as component replacement. You take out boilers and you put in natural gas boilers, and you don't do a lot of other engineering. Geothermal, completely different setup. This, you've got to engineer this baby from the ground up. And it's well rewarding, as you'll see, to do that, but it took upfront money. So we put $70,000 into a preliminary design. We needed that to get a bid. It's easy to get a bid to replace boilers. It's easy to get a bid to replace air handling units. You don't just get a reliable bid on geothermal without doing engineering design work. So set that expectation up front. So then we started, now we've gathered this information. We started what I call part one of the decision process, which was determining what are our options. And we kind of got off to a slow start because also it landed in the middle of COVID. And initially, the geothermal estimate was 30% higher than oil and natural gas. So as much as we wanted it, and we actually knew it was the right solution, that it was a non-starter at 30%. There's no way the congregation was going to go for that much of a higher cost. Furthermore, the congregation wanted proposals to compare vendors and technical options. I mention that because if we were a business or a single family, we might be able to go and make our decision by going directly to a single vendor, say, give us a bid, we'll work on the design with you and go. That would be faster, more cost effective, but no church that I know of could possibly make a decision in that manner. It's a congregational decision, so you're going to need to pair all kinds of options, and that takes time. In the middle of this came the Inflation Reduction Act in 2022. The significance of that is twofold. First of all, it put in up to 40% of the total project cost could be paid as a tax incentive by the federal government. That's a game changer. However, of course, we don't file taxes. The other part of the Inflation Reduction Act is that they realized that by doing this, they would rule out us, nonprofits like churches, community buildings, fire halls, town halls, schools, everybody would be excluded from these benefits. So in a amazingly bipartisan, enlightened move, they said, we will pay direct payments to nonprofits. In lieu of a tax credit, we'll write you a check for what your tax credit would have been. So now we're looking at a 40%. And on top of that comes mass save. I'll get to that later and show you how the numbers actually shake out. So in the end of 2023, we got these proposals all in. And as I mentioned, oil and natural gas were drop-in, and the geothermal was a much more fundamental evaluation of our heating and cooling needs and a integrated design from the bottom up. It was clear this was much more comprehensive, and just the amount of engineering that went into it would ensure us into the future a much better overall HVAC design, regardless of being geothermal, for our building. So that's a plus of doing the geothermal. Is one of many here. And then the congregation said, look, we don't want to go into this with a large financial risk when you're talking $4 to $5 million project. What if it goes up 10 or 20%? So we would like to get a fixed price proposal. Well, in order for our vendors to give us a competitive fixed price proposal, we needed to take we had done approximately 10% of the work with that $70,000 to get a geothermal design. We needed to take it to about the 30% point. So we had to invest another $120,000 in order to get a detailed enough design to come up with a fixed price proposal. That fixed price proposal was going to be key to getting our congregation to buy into this. Was that a question there? Okay, I'll keep going. As background information, so now when I start to get into this, you'll understand the proposal better. It's a 55,000 square foot building. HVAC, by the time we ultimately replaced it, it was 30 years old. 2 oil-fired boilers, one of which might have been on the Titanic. It was so old, the steam converted to water, and 7 rooftop units, well past the end of economical life. when you need to replace your HVAC is a logical time to be looking at doing this, or obviously new construction. Our system is 50% of the heating of our spaces, and still is, delivered by hot water baseboard radiators, and in the sanctuary, the original cast iron radiators that went in there in 1922. There's no room in our building to install the larger air ducts that would have been required to have a pure geothermal solution that delivers all the heating and cooling by air. So that's important. If I were building the building new, it's much easier because I could put in big air ducts and move enough air to do it. Because the geothermal air is cooler coming in than a natural gas or oil fired, you would need bigger ducts. Couldn't do that. So we needed to use both radiators and air. So that's why our design has both. Some of our initial zones were not air conditioned. The geothermal solution does provide air conditioning to all zones. And to jump ahead to a question we always get, will our system cover 100% of our heating, cooling, and needs 365 days a year? Yes. So this is sufficient capacity to heat and cool us on the hottest and coldest days everywhere to the design temperatures. Okay. Here's how the costs laid out. So these are real numbers. As we're going to start on the right with the natural gas and heat pumps. They turns out they are so close that in price that we put them together. You can see about a 2 million gross cost compared to 4.6 for geothermal. We put on a contingency that turned out to be very wise because we ended up using a good part of that. This is the interest we were going to pay on a bridging loan between when we started to get our capital campaign has the money coming in over a 3-year period. So we need a bridging loan until we get to all that capital campaign money in and all our incentives paid off. This is the interest that would have been paid. Since a higher initial cost on geothermal, more interest because of bigger loans required. Roof repairs, because we were going to remove the air handling units, we were going to repair our roof underneath those air handling units. We didn't budget for it here, but in retrospect, that would have been a mistake because once we got in there, we found out much more extensive roof repairs were needed. So we were lucky on that one. Now the big numbers. The IRA, Inflation Reduction Act rebates are across the board 30% plus 10% if you use North American source components, which all of ours are. So we are going to get a check for about 1.8 million, 1.9 million from the federal government back. And Mass Save, it's actually a little bit higher than that. It's 685, something like that. Huge rebates, which bring the project costs down to almost a wash between the options. So you'd think, oh, you're golden. Not so fast. It's a church. But this is really, really important to know that if you work hard at it and you go for these rebates, you can get this financially about to a wash. Plus, the Greener U, which is our prime contractor for the geothermal, is a fixed price contract. Okay, they took the risk of getting it into under the fixed price. At this time, when I made this slide, this was back before the election. So we weren't sure what was going to happen. We took the risk, big leap of faith that the current administration wouldn't cancel the geothermal rebates, and they didn't. So we're good. Total cost of ownership. People ask us this. Obviously, much better for geothermal, and this is conservative. We've learned subsequently that our utility costs for geothermal are probably going to be lower than estimated because the air conditioning mode is so tremendously cost effective. It's almost free. Secondly, the replacement costs, the reason those are lower, all your big moving components are all inside the building. So you don't have compressors and electronics and everything sitting up in your roof in that adverse environment. They last longer. Heat pumps last longer, and they're in components. They're easy to replace. So we expect, instead of a 25 to 30-year nominal life, we expect 50 years. So you're replacing it once in 100 years, because the well field's good for at least 100 years. And away you go. So total cost of ownership, obviously better. And then emissions. We would be net if you, because we still use electricity, our site emissions on our site are zero. But because we're consuming power that it may be produced that does have emissions, in all fairness, we have to say we're not truly net zero until our power sources on the grid are also net zero. But our building is net zero. Obviously, the way we did our capital campaign, for those of you that have done capital campaigns, I'm sure you've already got this tip. You don't campaign for just one thing, geothermal. So along with modernizing our geothermal, which is the centerpiece of our capital campaign, we wanted to create an endowment for our children to pay the salary of our children's ministry pastor, because that is a core value of our church and a real strength. Where we are committed to, when we raise capital, to also share with our community. We want to raise our property reserve, and we actually own 3 buildings. We own a parsonage, the Wellesley Village Church building, and we merged with another church in Weston, so we own a second church building. Why that becomes important is we shut this building down for 3 months and didn't occupy it and conducted everything out of our second chapel. That reduced our building costs because we didn't have to keep lights, power, fire alarms, everything you need to have people in your building. We could turn that all off. And we didn't have anybody obstructing our construction workers, shut down the driveways and stuff. So that helped us. So then now we know what the options are and what they cost. So then we entered part 2 of the decision process. What do we choose? So in September, we got it. And basically, you can think of all the options came down to 3 million. The geothermal, one of the advantages was a complete integrated design of all components, besides being obviously net zero and not burning fossil fuel. We also looked at air source heat pumps. Somebody asked me about that. That would have been great, and they would have worked. It would have been higher utility bills. However, the units to do that, the physical devices, were enormous. 12 to 15 foot high units, 6 of them. We didn't have the structure on our roof to put them up there. We would have had to either rebuild the roof, structural steel, or put them out in some field somewhere. We just didn't have that real estate. So if you're thinking air source heat pumps, consider right off the bat where you're going to put those things. It is not trivial at all. And we were running into Wellesley's restrictions on change. It would have changed the physical appearance and put stuff up that people don't like to see, and yada, yada, yada. So that's why air source heat pumps went by the way. Then it took us 3 months with the church, our church council, instead of meeting once a month, we were meeting once or twice a week for almost 2 months, just in the leadership team, just deciding how we were going to present this in the congregation and engaging the congregation, which we did through many, many methods over about a 2-month period in order to educate, answer questions, so forth. And on December 10th, we took a vote. I want to emphasize it was not unanimous. It was 85%. We needed 75% to go with the geothermal option. Then we wanted to get substantial start in calendar year 2024 in case they cut the geothermal IRA subsidies. We could claim, look, we started in 2024 substantially. You've got to grandfather it. So plus we needed a production well to understand, verify the hydrological data underneath us. So we started construction. First well went in the ground in mid-December. We have great videos about this, by the way. I'll show you the link at the end if you want to see what it's like. So here's a couple thoughts, and this will be the last slide on the decision process. It was a 10-year journey. So I think every nonprofit I've talked to, I think it's important to emphasize this is not an overnight decision. It's a really big decision, and it's going to take you time. So, figure on it. Even when we decided that we really wanted to go geothermal, it took us 2 more years and 150 grand to get to where we had a fixed price proposal we could vote on. Something to think about. Because it took us time and because we did a lot of good work, we understood that at the initial, that 10% design estimated 1.7 million. By the time we did the details design, it was up to 3 million. Only maybe 20% of that was due to the elapsed time and cost of components going up. The rest is due to a better design. So word of caution, in a sophisticated engineering design like this, you need to invest in the design. Kathy and I met once or twice a week for almost a year with the design team before we got to this bids to kind of show you the level of effort that's required. Down to figuring hour by hour, day by day, 365 days a year, how every single space in your is going to be used so that you can figure out your total heat loads and stuff. So you are going to be involved a lot in the design process for a successful design. As I said, if we'd have been able to go single source and just decide and go directly to design build instead of design bid build, we'd have saved 10%, but no way that decision process would have worked for a congregational church. So you're going to, unless you have a decision process that is cleaner than ours, cleaner isn't the right word, or you don't have to get every single member of the congregation to agree. You're going to need comparative bids and technology, so you might as well start out doing that. Had it not been for these 2 rebates, 1.8 million from the government, from the federal government, and another 665,000 from Mass Save, we couldn't have done this geothermal. And it was not unanimous even afterwards. Now, subsequently, I think now that we're heating with it and people have seen it, that number's going up, but that's where we're at. So I'm going to pause here because the next piece, if we go into it, would be, kind of what it is. And this was all about the things that got us there. Kent, if that's you think the way to go, we can take some questions now, or I could do that, what it is, and then do questions. Which would you prefer?
I think it'd be a good idea to take some questions now and then move on to what it is. Maybe could you stop your sharing for a moment, Mark, and then
I can.
Everybody.
Let's see here. There we go.
All right, great. Does anybody have a question? Let's see.
Stephen, Morgan, and Jim.
Yes, did you ever look at solar before you started the project?
We already had solar installed. Our roof has arrays on it already. So we were already there on that. Oh, so, or do you mean solar heating?
Yes.
No, we did not consider solar heating because first of all, our real estate's all taken up with solar panels for electric.
Okay. Thanks.
Great.
Jim?
Mark, thanks very much. This is fascinating. I've talked with the folks at Greener U about this project too, but it's great to get your take on it. I'd put a question in the chat that Kathy answered about the radiators. I was surprised to hear you using water radiators, and was asking if you had to change them to high efficiency radiators, which he said, no, you're using your existing radiators. So I'm curious, how how was that determined that those radiators would actually work? Because isn't I assume the geothermal temperature is lower than the gas hydronic temperature was.
Yes, across the board. And so our loop runs about 110 degrees on geothermal, and it ran 180 on oil fired or natural gas. So your geothermal loops are cooler. Ergo, you have to have enough flow to the radiators supplemented with the heat coming down from the air handling units to heat your rooms. That was this detailed engineering design. We determined that was going to be possible. We did have to modify one set of radiators. Those are the big cast iron ones in our sanctuary. And they were modified by putting fans underneath they're enclosed the way we have them. They're enclosed in a cabinet with louvers on top.
Mhm.
We put fans in the bottom to blow air through to get more efficient heating out of the radiators. And that is, and even with, they're not actually turned on yet. That'll be in the next couple of weeks. But this Sunday, we were only running at about 20% load on the heat pumps, and that sanctuary was toasty.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that is part of your detailed engineering design to determine that.
Great. Great. Thanks.
Monty? You're muted, Monty.
Well, you were obviously wise to make this transition at a time when your existing systems were nearing the end of their expected life expectancy. But you would have had to replace them one way or another anyway. And so my question is, did you calculate what the cost would have been if you had simply replaced the 40-year-old fossil fuel heating system with the 2025 model fossil fuel heating system? So you would have known how much it would have cost just to update basically the current system so that you could compare the cost of going geothermal with the cost you would have had to incur anyway. Because that makes the cost of going geothermal really just business as usual plus an increment. And the increment is really just the net additional expenditure that the congregation would have to make. And that would be a smaller number than the total of the project of going geothermal. That would
Yes.
affect the perception of it. So I wondered if you had invested in calculating the cost of just simply replacing one fossil fuel system with a new fossil fuel system so that you could make that comparison.
We did, and that the congregation insisted on that. The rock bottom cheapest thing would be to just change the oil fired things to more efficient. But our system was degrading enough that we also need to replace all 7 rooftop units. So the drop-in solutions of putting either new natural gas boilers or new oil fired boilers in with all new rooftop units still came out to $3 million. So when you put the rebates on geothermal, any of the solutions, be it fossil fuel, natural gas or oil, or geothermal, all bottom lined after rebates to $3 million.
Were those rooftop units for the AC or were they for heat?
They were both.
Oh, they were
So
both.
our previous rooftop units, as are these, were heating and air conditioning. The heating at that was the fossil fuel fired hot water going up to coils, and the air conditioning had all the big compressors and electronics on the roof. The difference with the geothermal is those up there we don't even call them rooftop units, we call them air handling units because all they are is a fan and a heating coil from the geothermal. There's no compressors or anything up there now because that's all the heat pumps. So that's the difference. We went from 7 that have all that stuff in them to 2 that have just air handling, fans and dampers and coils.
Okay, well, and I guess we're going to learn more about the system itself. Stephen, Stephen Morgan, did you have a question? You're on mute.
Not me.
I think he already asked.
I
Okay.
think his hand was still up from the first question.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay.
Well, I did have a kind of a process question, which is that I wonder if you could speak a little bit more about the role of Greener U. At what point you brought them in, how, what did they do exactly, how central they were to the whole process?
I can, and I'm gonna ask Kathy to chip in on this too, because my endorsement is gonna be so strong, you probably believe me. And I want
We're
Kathy to,
interested to know this. Okay, yes.
yeah, I
Kathy.
think, other
So
than the decision, in my opinion, other than the decision to go geothermal, selecting Greener U as our prime was the best decision we made in the whole project. They were truly a partner. And what I suggest you do is go to our website. I have the link at the end. And this last Sunday, the CEO of Greener U spoke at our service, and he talks about the external perspective of us, what we did inside the church, how we worked with them. And when you listen to that, it really will show you what a true partnership we had with them. And it took an enormous amount of coordination because although we shut the building down all summer, about September, we have a Chinese language school that goes there. We had to start doing church stuff. And so we're working in between construction. They shifted shifts. They moved people around. They changed equipment. In a project this scope, you're going to keep coming up with things, and they worked with us to get the best solutions. They worked with us to get the bid. They worked with us to help sell it to the congregation. They did what it took. And I have not seen, I did a lot of contracting in the military. Never seen anybody work with us as good as that. So Kathy, I'd like you to, if you would.
Sure. I think one of the key differences and one of the things about Greener U versus the other folks that we got bids from is the other folks were, as Mark said, sort of, we'll sell you this piece of equipment. It'll be a replacement. Whereas Greener U was a real partner. The origins of their name are sort of greener universities. And so they have for, 16 to 20 years now been working with nonprofits. And so they work on the long term with their clients. And so, we've talked to them not just about our HVAC system, but about upgrading the rest of our lighting. They would have done other if we hadn't done solar, they don't do solar, but they have a broad range of things that they speak to work with you over a long period of time. And their team, we've been meeting weekly with their project team on site, and they're just phenomenal. We really, I'm like Mark, I can't say enough about them, because if I need something and we need to know an answer, I can pick up the phone and call the CEO of the company. So it's been a wonderful partnership.
And
Absolutely.
did you have phased contracts with them, or did you just have one big one?
We had one. We had done a huge expansion renovation of the church in 2002, and it went way over budget, and it took years and years to pay it back. And there were some people who had a lot of memories of that and were really nervous, not only about geothermal, what's that? We don't know anyone who's doing it. And so one of our congregants is a lawyer, and so he handled the contract, and it was his thinking, we want a fixed price contract. And so that's what we decided, that we were going to spend some money up front so that we could get a fixed price contract. And we have had one change order to date, and that was, as Mark mentioned, when they took the components off the roof was soaking wet, and that roof was also at the end of its life. So we had to come up with some money to fix the roof so that you could then put the new units on top of a better roof. But to tell you the truth, Greener U, they were also fearful about the condition of our roof. So they had, in their own contingency, put in money to fix the roof. And so between the two of us, it was that roof money was available within the contingency. So we still haven't even spent our entire contingency yet.
So to clarify, we did actually have two Greener U contracts. That 120,000 I told you about the design to get the fixed bid, that was with Greener U.
Okay,
And then we awarded the $4.7 million contract.
So, yeah, and they've been responsible for all the subcontractors. So that's actually, we deal with them, but they deal then with the mechanicals, the engineering, the electric, the plumbing, you've got to, they're
so
running.
they were the general contractor.
They're the
Yeah.
GC to all the subs on the job.
I see.
Monty's got a hand up, and I'm wondering how many more questions you want to take before we move to the next part, just keeping in a sense of how much more we have to look forward to here. Do you want to take Monty's question, Monty?
Sure. Let's do that and then
Yeah.
maybe move on.
Move on, thanks.
Okay, thank you. You obviously have had to or are having to have a capital campaign to raise money for this outlay. And it takes a while for that money to come in. And so in the meantime, I'm presuming that you've had to borrow money. And I wonder if in the process of looking for who to borrow the money from, you discovered any innovative financing mechanisms that pertain particularly to this kind of project.
Well, I wish I could
that-
say that we had innovative financing, but we are fortunate in that we have a reserve amount of it's almost like an endowment, I guess. And so the initial money we borrowed from ourselves. So and are paying it back. There's a standard federal payback rate. So if you're borrowing from yourselves, you pay that back at that rate. So the money that has been borrowed, the church is going to earn interest on it when it comes back to them. And then separately, our treasurer went out and searched for the best deals he could get for borrowing in the open market. And and that's what he's done. And I think our borrowing rate at the moment is somewhere around 6.5%.
So
Thank
yeah,
you.
but not particularly, nothing exotic there, no magic. Sorry. We tried federal grants, we tried all this other stuff. I applied for a lot of grants, but we got ruled out because guess what? We're in a high income district, right? So we were ineligible because of who we are and where we were. Okay.
Okay, well, why don't we continue on then, Mark?
Okay. So this is the what it is part. So what you're seeing there, first let's start with a well field. The blue shape in the middle, this is our building. And the street you access the building with is down here called Church Street. And our driveway goes around the building. This is a cloister garden and out. So our 18 wells are spaced like this, all underneath our driveway. If you go there today, you can't see anything. There's nothing sticking up. There's no manhole covers. These are forever underground and you never see anything of them once they're drilled. Now it's extremely intrusive. Probably looks like, Dallas drilling oil fields when this thing comes in, because there's 18 wells, 850 feet deep. They are closed loop, which means you drill a 6-inch diameter hole, 850 feet down into granite. And for us, that means you went through about 25 feet of overburden and you get 825 feet of bedrock. Obviously, you want bedrock as soon as possible. That adds up to about 6 miles of underground piping. Think about that. It's like drilling a 6-inch hole through granite from Wellesley to Framingham. That's a lot of piping in the ground. And there's another mile of piping in the building. There's about 7 miles of piping in this thing. Then we put a 1.5-inch hose down. It's got a U-joint at the bottom and back up. So the water is circulating down and back up in our well. And the well is filled with concrete. So it's solid with these pipes in it. There is another way of doing it. If you're in a high water area, this can be open instead of closed loop, and you'll be sucking up groundwater and pumping water back down into the ground. That's not the case with us. Ours are all dry 800 feet down, not a drop of water. Except when we hit a fire main. That was exciting. On the very first well, despite all of the efforts to identify what was down there. Let's see. And you can have horizontal wells, you can have loop wells, you can have angled wells, all kinds of different ways of drilling them, depending on what your site is. So that's a whole nother thing. But this is how ours is set up. Okay. Just a second, I gotta get the right screen up here. Okay, so now I'll go through the 3 modes that it operates in just really quickly. This is the heating mode. So you have your well field over here on the left. The heat pumps take the cold water out of the ground, heats it up, and hot water goes out to the baseboard radiators or up to the air handling units on the roof. The radiators obviously radiate. The roof air handling units on the roof send warm air down into the various zones, and then it all goes back into the ground to get cooled down again. In our situation, the radiators are always the initial source of heat. We keep these going in a hot water loop all the time, and then there's 47 different zones. Radiators, 47 different control valves. I'm just giving you these numbers to give you the idea of the scope and complexity here, balancing this all out. And then the air handling units provide air down to 7 zones. So that's the heating mode. The cooling mode, the interesting part of this, and one we underestimated initially, is we don't actually even use the heat pumps. In this mode, we take the cool water out of the ground, it goes right up to the roof and makes cool air and goes down to the rooms and back down to the ground. So in the cooling mode, the only cost of doing this is the cost of the pump circulating the water and the blowers. That's it. So it's almost free. Free, by the way, it doesn't mean free as in money. That's a different technical term there. But that's why we overestimated the cost of our utilities in running this thing. Okay. Then there's the mixed mode. This is where you have to both heat and cool. And where you use this typically is spring and fall. We have a south side and a north side of our building. In the spring, that south side gets the direct low angle sun and it gets hot, and the north side doesn't get any and it's cold and has to be heated. So what happens is the side that's hot, you're going to cool with air, which is going to warm that loop water up. We send it right to the radiators on the other side and heat those rooms. So we're actually moving the heat from one side of the building to the other without the use of heat pumps. And we supplement them with the heat pumps as is needed to add or subtract heat or cooling, depending which side's hotter and colder. So that's kind of a really interesting feature of this. This is now we're live. Okay, we actually are running. So these are the real screenshots taken today of our unit in operation, just to kind of illustrate to you graphically kind of what your control systems look like. They're delightful to use compared to what we had before. And it also kind of shows how this all works. So if you look from left to right, our air handling units on the roof take the return air from our first and second. This is first and second floor because this is only one of the 2 units. And then you take outside air in because you have to mix it, right? In your building, you have to keep fresh air in there. And you can see down here, right now today, when at 4 o'clock this afternoon, when we took this, the combination of mixing air out of the rooms with outside air gives you air entering that at 62.8 degrees to these heating coils. Now this is the dual temperature loop. So if we were cooling, instead of these being hit with hot water, they'd be cold water and they'd be cooling the air. Then it goes through 4 fans and it goes out to our 4 zones, each of which have dampers. And what it's showing here is these 3 zones to our Sanctuary, Village Common, and Burt Chapel are in their minimum position of 20% airflow, because you always need to have some air exchange there, but minimal heating. And then Village Hall, where we had activities going on, is up at 83% because it needs more heat to supplement the radiators. That kind of shows you how a rooftop air handling unit operates. This shows you, these are what the heat pumps actually look like. There's 3 of them, look just like that. And the 3 of them each have 2 separate heat pump units in them. So we have 6 modules total. I've been watching at today's temperatures weather we're having right now, to maintain our 55,000 square foot building, we're running at about 30%. We're running these 2 heat pumps only. We're not using these 4. As it gets colder or hotter, we would kick these in. And the other 2, those are for steady state. But like we drop our sanctuary temperature down to 60 degrees Monday to Friday, right? Because we're not using it. To bring it back up to temp, then you kick, that's why you have this excess capacity here to bring yourself up to temp in a reasonable period of time. So this is what our calculation was, that we would need to not only heat at the hottest day and coldest day of the year, but to change that temperature as we bring those rooms online. And the system itself, all our church administrator does is enter the calendar, what rooms are going to be occupied at what time during the week. It's just a drag and drop calendar, and you can copy each week. And then the system figures out, oh, okay, hey, they're going to use the sanctuary at 7 o'clock Sunday morning. I got to start at 3 in the morning to get that to where it's supposed to be at 7 a.m. It figures that all out. And it'll look at our rooms and say, oh, classrooms A and B, okay, they're going to be used on Wednesday afternoon. They won't be used again until Friday. I can drop the temperatures to here. Or they say, hey, classrooms A and B, we're using them on Wednesday, but we're also using them on Thursday, so it's not efficient to drop the temperature. I'll keep them at the same temperature. It does all that stuff. It's great. It's awesome. Okay. Then it has the loops. There's the groundwater loop and its pumps. That goes out to the wells. This is the dual temp to the roof. And these are the hot water loops to the radiators and another component in the ductwork that reheats the air, called a variable air volume unit, but beyond the scope. Here's what the heat pump screen looks like. So you have the water coming in from the wells here, and you can see today our water was coming in at 46.5 degrees Fahrenheit. And this is the pump sucking it up from the wells. The bypass lines, which are used in the air conditioning mode, are obviously not in use today. We're running at 29.3% capacity of our heat pumps, which is putting our water out at, hot water is going out to the radiators at 106 degrees, and it's going to the roof at 106 degrees. So this goes up to the roof and back from the roof. This goes out to the radiators and back from the radiators. That's what it looks like. And those are real numbers, obviously. Okay. And that really is the quick and dirty on an extremely complicated system that is phenomenally easy to use. They actually had a discussion with us about how often we are going to physically need to go down and look at these heat pumps. They have organizations that only look at them on a weekly, but once a week. Somebody goes down and just makes sure that there's nothing because instrumentation does everything else for you. And this is all automated, highly, highly automated with alarms and warnings and monitoring. Despite all the complexity I've gone through, that once you're actually operating it, it's really brain dead simple to run.
And Greener U is actually doing this monitoring and running it for a year with us. So we're not actually, we fed them all the information of the spaces we need heated and they are running it, but gradually we'll be taking it over, but they're on call for a year.
Yeah, we don't actually even take operational control till mid-December. And then they and the prime contractor at least once a month look at how all the rooms, everything's doing, decide are we running too hot, too cold, are we getting enough airflow, blah, blah, blah. And we tweak it in over a full annual heating and cooling cycle. Again, the commitment that Greener U brings to the table. Then this is my last slide. That URL down there. If you just go to Wellesley Village Church, there's a link on the first page. You can get to it, or you can get directly to this. And this has like 9 or 10 videos that we've done from when we first decided to do it. And it's a drone shot showing the first drill rig. Takes you through everything you ever wanted to know about drilling an 850-foot well and how all the construction went and everything I just showed you. And it also has what Rob During, the CEO of Greener Hughes, talk. I really suggest you listen to that. If you're thinking about that, listen to what he has to say. And the second piece of that is from the town of Wellesley's sustainability director and her comments about how this fits in the town's whole efforts. That's well worth looking at those videos. And these are just some of interest. This is well drilling in progress up above. These are the old boilers down here. Here's the largest mobile crane I've ever seen in my life, lifting one of these air handling units up. That steeple's 180 feet high, by the way. And this thing swings just below the top of that steeple to get this big air handling unit up there. That's what the well field looks like when it's about to enter a building. And this is the internals of one of the 6 heat pump modules. And again, for all the complexity, it's really got 2 parts. It's got a motor and compressor and a heat exchanger. It's a giant version of your refrigerator that goes hot and cold directions. That's what it is. It's a lot. By not burning and having combustion, things are way simplified down there, and you don't have this adverse environment of combustion occurring. So we are very optimistic of the longevity is. So I'll stop there. And entertain any questions anybody has on the how it works part of it. And I should also mention the 2 people like Kathy and I were a great combination. Clearly, with my nuclear engineering background, I'm pretty good at HVAC. And Kathy, as a former moderator, which is the lay leader in our organization, excellent at working with all the all of the factors in that you run into in the congregation and with the leadership. And now in this last phase, she's focusing on everything outside the building and all the restoration and scheduling with all of our users and renters and stuff inside the building. And I'm focusing strictly on the technical part of getting this thing groomed in. So I can't see one person coordinating a project like this. And I think Kathy agreed with me. Those 2, yeah. I mean, we put a ton of time into this in the last 2 years, and we have another solid month of work to go. So having 2 people, if you're going to do this, representing you, one with some good solid engineering background on HVAC, electrical, mechanical, and somebody is plugged into all the factors that you need to consider in the church. Like, for example, I never dreamed that there was this secret person in charge of our vegetation. The first time I ripped out a tree, I find out what's somebody's tree, or that I'm inhumanely killing mice. That's my latest crisis I got to deal with. On top of geothermal, I got to find a more humane way to kill the mice that got in during this construction. So, you got the full range of stuff here.
Yeah.
Joy,
Okay.
it looks like you've got a question.
Yeah, would it be possible for you to put back up that one slide? Or do you have the deck that will be available afterwards? But the one slide that shows all the wells that go around the church, the number of wells, and you have the.
Yes. Okay, let me get back to that there.
The wells need to be 30 feet
That one.
apart from each other. So that's it. We're lucky that our driveway was long enough that we happen to have the exact amount really of space we needed. So
there's a phenomenal, you should have seen the engineering program that shows the heat distribution structure in the modeling that they do is astounding. This is all this trade-off of many short wells, fewer deep wells. How much real estate do you have? There's a that's where the real engineering work goes into that kind of thing.
Well, Joy, did you have a question?
I did. I had two. Are you two retired?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, just note, because, having committing that amount of time is really a gift that you were able to give to the church. The second
did.
thing.
It is, but could I also say we have a tremendous group of volunteers supporting. We have a properties team. We do have a facilities manager. There are a lot of folks who are working full time that are doing, helping with the raising the money and, et cetera. But you're right. Mark and I did have that luxury.
No, the church had the luxury of having you. I think that's wonderful. But the thing I wanted to ask about is to go back to the capital campaign and your suggestion that there were these 5 different things that you were raising money for simultaneously, and that was a strategy to do that. What percentage of the capital campaign was related to the environmental effort?
It was, go ahead, Kathy.
Well, I was just going to say, the HVAC is about 2.4 million out of 4 million. But there are, continued elements within the other pieces. So for instance, in our Weston site, we would like to do more environmental things to help update and upgrade that building and have them be as, environmentally as careful as our building.
Yeah. Okay. But that gives me a sense of what the percentage was. This was really the core of what you were doing in some ways.
Yeah, we'd be happy to share the detailed numbers, but if you take this circle as 3 million, you got 1 million divided across the rest of these.
Right.
Every time we do a capital campaign, we always have a piece that's outreach as well, which is probably pretty common for churches. So that was a given. And honestly, being creative about children's ministry, we're a Protestant congregation, and we're looking ahead, and salaries are a very expensive piece of our annual operating budget, and we never want to lose our children's ministry and whatnot. So starting to think ahead to build a reserve for that is what our thinking is around the children and youth.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting because we have a number of things that we, hope to be able to raise money for. So I was interested in this process. Okay, thank you.
Stephen has a hand up.
And one is a comment in a dream that when David Ward retires, he becomes a member of King's Chapel. And number 2, how do you deal with the thermostat? This person feels hot, this person feels cool, those micro environments.
Oh, welcome to my world. So fortunately, our building management system allows us more than you would think. We're able to set a range. Well, let's talk about the simple room that's only controlled by one thermostat, because like the sanctuary, a big space like that is a more complex thing. But just a single room, which is where this really applies. First of all, it's got a sensor, and you probably want to move away from the word thermostat because you're measuring nowadays more than just temperature in the room. Okay. But for temperature, we'll say in occupied mode, it should be X, and in an unoccupied mode, it should be Y. And that'll pick it up automatically off the calendar. Then we're allowed to specify how big a range the local user can use to change that thermostat and whether or not they can do it. And we can do it for all 90 sensors. We can get that granular if we want. And we actually will, as we gain some experience, like one of the highly occupied rooms, like the pastor's office, where you have the same person all the time, and it's in a sunny corner location, we can adjust how much what that room should run at normally based on that person's personal preference and how much range she can move it up and down. And then how long, once she does that, is that it resets back to our thing after 2 hours, for example. That's what we're going to tweak in over the next year. We have a first pass at it, but you can imagine it'll be as experience goes. So we actually get more granularity than I had expected.
That's great.
And this is typical of any modern building management system, okay, not just geothermal.
So I had a question, if I may, a technical question. So you mentioned that you had looked at air source heat pumps, but that their weight was too great and their size, I guess, for the roof. But if you'd gone that way, would you have been redoing your plumbing to carry refrigerant rather than heating or cooling water?
Good question, because there's two ways to do this. One is you have air source heat pumps where you're going to bring water to it and it's just going to be heating or cooling your water loop. That's how we would have done it.
I see.
Because if you go to what would be the commercial equivalent of split mini, where you're running refrigerant to units in the rooms of your house, we would have to run plumbing all over the house, all over the building. And
Right.
that would have been cost prohibitive. So we would not have gone that solution. Would have been an option you would have in new construction or a one-story building where you can get in the roof above all of them, for example. But it wasn't a technical option for us to do that.
But the other option was technically possible if you had the structures to support.
If you had the structure to, yep.
Okay, that's very interesting. Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
And remember, you're going to have the other trade-off with this is air source heat pumps. It's 100% electricity. So, and you're going against the 100-degree outside temperature down to -20 outside temperature, where we're going between 42 and 52. So the geothermal heat pumps are highly optimized for that band and much more efficient than an air source system. And we don't consume as much electricity because, like you saw, for cooling, you just go up and down to the roof with the pumps. So air source heat pump is also longer term cost of ownership going to be more expensive because you're going to be buying electricity and you're not in control of that cost.
Right.
Okay.
I have a question about finances. Can we go back to that? I'm wondering how long the capital campaign was for, the length of the capital campaign, and how many members or quote giving units, I think they call it often, are in your church. And typically with a capital campaign, people are donating to something beyond their annual gift. Is that true? And so could you give us a sense of range or percentage or amount of what individual giving units were giving beyond the annual gift?
So I can't speak to the actual number because I don't have that information yet, but you're right. We have an annual stewardship campaign, and that happens every single year, and that funds our operating budget. So this campaign was over and above this. The last capital campaign we did, was several years ago, and so we don't do them very often, and only do them if we have to do them. But the goal is to try to get 100. We won't get 100%, but the goal is to make the campaign as interesting as possible for the things that everyone's passionate about, to try to get to 100% participation. But like most churches, there are a small number of people that give the most, but every contribution is important.
I can give you I was also on the finance side of this, so I can give you some. Please treat this as a shared between church members. Don't go publishing this, please. But of that 4 million, we started, it took about a year. And in that year, the first 9 months were quiet, us approaching one-on-one to donors. And in that phase, we got about 3.6 of 4 million, which pretty impressive, without ever, other than everybody knowing that we were going to do it sooner or later. This was one-on-ones, or team, maybe me and the pastor, but basically church leaders going one-on-one to the congregation, raised 3.6 of the 4.
Mhm.
I think we're, what are we, Kathy, $100,000 short of 4 million now?
That
That's-
was last Sunday, but my
What?
guess, I guess we're trying to get to 100% by this coming Sunday on Thanksgiving.
So we'll probably hit yeah, and I'm optimistic we're gonna, so the remaining
Wow.
600,000 was raised as we went to a broader congregation. And
Yeah.
I think that's representative of, we hired a team, professionals to help us with this, and that was about what we were expecting.
Great.
And the $4 million, why 4 million? Because we carefully considered what we could go above the 3 that we need for geothermal, and that's what we came up with, and we did it. So
Mhm. Mhm. How many members in the church?
300 giving units, Kathy, is that a good number?
I think so. I think that's about
Yeah.
right.
Mhm. Thank you.
Well, are there any more questions?
I think I was a little skeptical personally about the value dollars paid versus return on getting a nonprofit fundraising professional in there. In retrospect, it was worth it.
Hmm.
And you're
Yeah,
welcome
talk
to
about
engage our
time.
church.
They have the time. They help put together the materials that are sent out. They help with crafting your message and help yeah. And it takes away the onus off the stewardship committee, who has their own responsibility sort of year to year.
Of
Right.
keeping the annual going.
Right.
Yeah. And the magnitude of gifts, we had no $1 million checks. Okay. No, we don't have that kind of people. So they were, I think we had one donor up there in the 500,000 range. Everybody else, well below that, and we did it. So, and I'm sure on a closed basis, if you wanted details, we would be happy to share our experience. I think I can make that offer for the church with you if you get to that point.
Thank you. That's so helpful. Really appreciate all that information.
Yes, and congratulations. Wow. I mean, it's quite an incredible thing you've done. And thank you so much. Really, I would really, really appreciate it. And hope to talk to you more perhaps. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful presentation.
Good luck. And if you have other questions that come up,
Yeah.
don't hesitate to reach out to us.
We do wish you the best. Now that it's up and operating and it's exceeding our expectations, and we had high expectations, I encourage you to seriously consider it.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Have a great evening and see you again.
I will send you, I have a couple updates in here from the deck I sent you
Okay.
with like the slides of the actual operation. So I'm going to send you that deck right after this.
Oh, great. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Sure
Okay.
thing.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you
Good night.